Let us talk about the TV dinner. It is a product that promises the wholesome comfort of a home-cooked family meal, provided your family is made of compartmentalized aluminum and tastes like a wet sponge. Today, we pretend the frozen dinner was a triumph of mid-century American innovation. In reality, it was born out of sheer corporate panic, a rolling biological hazard, and the blatant theft of a much smarter person's idea, which is just the American dream neatly partitioned into three distinct sections. We have to go back to the 1950s. The post-war economic boom was in full swing, and people had money to spend on things they did not need, specifically the television set. Suddenly, families did not want to look at each other during dinner. They wanted to stare at a glowing box in absolute silence. Naturally, the food industry had to figure out how to feed a nation of glassy-eyed consumers without requiring them to use a knife, a stove, or their brains. Corporate history will tell you that a company called Swanson brilliantly invented the TV dinner to solve this modern problem. That is a lie. Before Swanson ever put a sliver of processed turkey onto a metal tray, a man named William Maxon was already doing it. In 1945, Maxon created strato plates. These were frozen pre-cooked meals partitioned onto treated paper plates. He invented them for military personnel and commercial airline passengers. He even built a special oven to heat them up in the sky. Maxon was a pioneer. Unfortunately, he died before he could sell his grand idea to the general public. So his legacy became the literal invention of airplane food. A truly tragic end for a visionary. Then came Jack Fisher in 1947. Jack noticed that drunk people at bars eventually get hungry. Since dive bars do not employ executive chefs, Jack invented friggy dinners. They were frozen meals wrapped in foil that a bartender could throw in an oven. It was a game-changing innovation that kept patrons drinking heavily without passing out from starvation. But the real victims of this corporate heist were Albert and Meyer Bernstein. In 1949, these brothers founded the Quaker State Food Corporation. They were the ones who actually packaged frozen dinners on rigid aluminum trays with separate compartments. They were moving hundreds of thousands of units to an eager public. They had the product, the manufacturing, and the vision. They just lacked a massive, overfunded marketing department. Oh, hello, Swanson, CA, Swanson and Sons, was a massive meat and poultry conglomerate operating out of Nebraska. In 1953, Swanson encountered a minor logistical hiccup. Someone at the company catastrophically miscalculated exactly how much turkey the American public wanted to eat for Thanksgiving. They overestimated the demand by 520,000 pounds. And if you haven't put it together, I'll do it for you. They had 10 refrigerated train cars packed to the ceiling with dead birds just sitting on the tracks. Here's the fun part. The refrigeration units on these train cars only worked when the trains were actually moving. So Swanson had to pay train engineers to just drive endlessly back and forth across the American Midwest so 250,000 birds would not rot in the sun. And who hasn't had to deal with that problem before? Just driving a biological time bomb from Nebraska to the East Coast and back again while your accountants weep. This was a financial disaster that was going to sink the company. Enter Jerry Thomas. Jerry was a Swanson salesman with a profound gift for taking credit. The official Swanson mythology states that Jerry was on a business trip, happened to see an aluminum tray made by a metal company, and had a sudden stroke of absolute genius. He supposedly sketched a 3-compartment tray on an envelope, rushed back to his bosses and said they should slice up the endless train turkey, freeze it on these trays, and sell it. Of course, the tray he supposedly invented from scratch was the exact same tray the Bernstein brothers were already using. He did not invent anything. He just looked at a Quaker State dinner and realized it was the perfect garbage can for their aging train turkey. Swanson loved the idea because it saved them from bankruptcy, but they had another problem. You cannot just freeze sliced meat, potatoes, and peas and expect them all to heat up at the exact same rate in a standard oven. If you tried that, your potatoes turn into boiling lava, and your turkey remains a solid block of prehistoric ice. To solve this, they brought in a bacteriologist named Betty Cronin. Betty was the one who actually had to figure out how to make this culinary nightmare safe for human consumption. She spent endless months calculating the exact mass density and moisture content of the meat, the gravy, the peas, and the potatoes. She engineered it so they would all reach a safe internal temperature simultaneously in a 425-degree oven. Betty did the actual science. Betty made sure millions of Americans did not contract lethal food poisoning from well-traveled turkey. Jerry Thomas sketched a tray that already existed. Naturally, Jerry was inducted into the Frozen Food Hall of Fame and Betty was not, but Jerry did have one genuinely cynical marketing idea. He knew the newest obsession in the American household was the television, so he suggested they call this leftover turkey salvage operation the TV dinner. Swanson went all in. They designed the cardboard packaging to look exactly like a wood-paneled television set, complete with little printed knobs and a screen showing the meal. They priced it at 98 cents. They launched the TV dinner in 1954. The initial production run was 5,000 units, just to see if people would actually eat train meat. They sold 10 million in the first year. The marketing was absolutely flawless. It preyed perfectly on the post-war housewife who was tired of cooking from scratch, and the husband who cared more about watching a broadcast than speaking to his family. It was the perfect product for the collapse of the traditional family dynamic. You did not even have to wash a dish. You just ate your processed turkey and threw the metal tray straight in the garbage. Swanson made an absolute fortune. They completely eclipsed the Bernstein brothers, who faded into historical obscurity. Swanson soon added fried chicken, Salisbury steak, and mystery meatloaf to their lineup. Eventually, they introduced a 4-compartment tray to include dessert. This was usually some sort of sad, bubbling apple or cherry fruit cobbler. Because of the laws of thermodynamics, this molten cobbler would inevitably boil over the aluminum barrier and spill into your mashed potatoes, creating an unholy cherry potato slurry. Everyone accepted this as a completely normal part of life. Competitors naturally flooded the market. Banquet, Morton, and Stauffer's all wanted a piece of the lazy consumer demographic, but Swanson remained the undisputed king. Eventually, the federal government had to step in and tell Swanson they could not legally trademark the term TV dinner because it had become a generic household phrase. A game-changing innovation that everyone claimed they invented, now owned by everyone. By the 1960s, the frozen dinner was an unstoppable cultural force, but consumer patience only grows thinner over time. Heating an aluminum tray in a conventional oven took 25 to 30 minutes. That is practically an eternity for someone who wants to eat a rubbery steak while watching a 30-minute sitcom. Then came the microwave oven. The microwave changed everything, mostly for the worse. You cannot put an aluminum tray in a microwave unless you want your kitchen to catch fire and explode. So the industry had to pivot. They stripped away the iconic rigid aluminum tray and replaced it with microwave-safe plastics and crystallized polyethylene terephthalate. It sounds delicious. The microwave solved the time problem. You could now nuke an entire meal in 4 short minutes, but it entirely destroyed the texture. The conventional oven used to give the breaded fried chicken at least a little bit of crispness. The microwave just boiled everything from the inside out in a tragic bath of its own trapped steam. The peas became wrinkled, radioactive green pellets. The meatloaf became a wet, spongy brick, but we ate it anyway because waiting 20 minutes was apparently too hard for modern society. To compensate for the fact that microwave frozen food mostly tastes like warm cardboard and regret, food companies started pumping the meals entirely full of salt, fat, and artificial flavoring. They rebranded for new demographics. Swanson introduced the Hungry Man dinners, using enormous football players to convince adult men that eating a pound of processed meat and a week's worth of sodium from a plastic tray was a highly masculine activity. They doubled the portion sizes, ensuring that the convenience meal was not only depressing to eat, but also actively detrimental to your cardiovascular health. Today, the literal phrase TV dinner is largely a relic. We call them frozen meals or microwave dinners now. The aluminum tray is dead and gone, replaced by black plastic bowls and clear steam release film that always burns your fingers when you try to peel it back. We have organic options, vegan options, and protein-packed power bowls for people who pretend they are going to the gym later. Akim, Tradela, but the core philosophy remains exactly the same as it was in 1953 when Swanson was panicking over their rotting train turkey. It is about eating quickly, eating alone, and avoiding the kitchen sink at all costs. That is all there is to it. Go ahead and confess everything in the comments below. Anyway, please donate a subscribe to fund the next video.